Hey everybody, back again. This is a part 2 of welders. And here's a kicker for you. You can run a welder off a generator. People say, "Oh, you can't do that." You can, and here's the trick. Inverter. You are looking for an inverter generator, and you have to find an inverter generator that has a operating load 3 times your wattage. Now, how do you get wattage from a welder? How do you do that? How does this figure? Volts times amps. You have a welder, say one of these MIG and flux welders. You have TIG and stick welders. Some of them work on 110. Some of them 110 240. So you're looking at that. Your average 110 is a 20 amp fuse. Your average 240, 30 amp fuse. You take 240 times 30 amps. Let's see, how do you get there? How do you get that? So, well, let's start with 120. 120 times 20 is 2400. Let's go 240 times 30. That's 7,200 watts. That's pretty damn high. So, how do you get an average of 3 times that height in an inverter generator? Well, the thing is with an inverter generator, if you can get one that is right around 8,000 running watts, your load watts, you should be able to operate a 240 welder on it normally. But here's how. I keep these things in my pouch all the time. It's literally laminated for me. These are the actual types of loads that we have. This is what you're looking at right here. This is what you go off of. This is the simplest equipment that you can run. Electrode amperage chart. It tells you what kind of electrode, the size electrode, and the right about area of where it operates. Now, I've seen people operating 5/16 rods in the 6010, 6011, all the way at 200 plus amps, and they're just burning. Oh, I'm a welder. I know what I'm doing. Well, you're looking right here between 110 and about 170, 180. You're going over. Now, there's people out there that they know a bit of welding. They really do, but they always argue about sizes and amperages. And here's another chart. Electrode amperage chart. This gives you the actual amperage that you should be operating in for any size. It gives you your inches and your millimeters so that it's anybody can guess this. Gives you all the way down through. This stuff right here, this is gold. I keep these with my welders at all times, and if I need to go back to the charts, I check the charts. I really do. I'm not the kind of guy that goes, you know what, I know everything at all times. I don't have to look at the instructions. I don't have to look at the books. I don't have to do anything. I consult the charts before any job. I really do. If I need to do anything, I can check the charts. I see the positions. I see the currents. Reverse penetration, deep, medium, shallow. E6010. E6011, deep penetration, 60,000 psi. That's pretty damn good stuff. And you get that same strength no matter the thickness of the rod. You get that with the 30 and 332 all the way to 3/16. You get the same penetration and the same strength. I've got my gauges. I've got my welding gauges. Tells you all the thicknesses. And I made this little pouch myself. This is the pouch that I made out of leather. I've got an actual gauge for steel. This is used on steel rods. If I find a rod and the markings are kind of knocked off, or hell, if I find a rod and I know that it's a 6010, well, what size is it? I can pull it out. I know the gauge. I know. I've got I can tell the exact size of the gauge. If I'm welding steel rods, I know the gauge of the steel. Now, looking at these, you have spot welders, 120, 240. Now, this whole video is for, home, garage work. If your buddy needs you to tack weld something on his trailer, if you need to weld something on a vehicle that you're working on, great. Absolutely wonderful. I still stand by this generator welder 100%. I really do. This is not a bad price, especially when its closest competition is $1,000 more and does less. There it is. This is one of the ones that I have. 80 amp. 80 amps. You know what 80 amps gets you? 80 amps gets you everything on this line. So you have 1/8 inch 308L, 7018 all the way to 1/8. You have the 7014 3/32. Everything before the 1/8 of 6013, you've got 6010 and 6011 all the way to an 1/8 inch. Now, these welders, they have an idiot mark on the side so that you know what it does. And the picture, I don't think they actually show a clear picture of it. Yeah, they don't even have the right side on there. They only show the left side. But on the right side, I took a picture of mine. It's all covered in gunk and stuff, but that's the other side. It tells you the electrode style, capacity 7 gauge steel, electrode cables, grounding cables. It tells you your continuous use and your 40% duration. Now it says up to 30, up from 1/16 to 3/32, but it does do heavier gauge. Now you're going with a lower amperage on these, but you still can do it. 7 gauge steel. Now, when we're talking gauges here, I'll bring this out here real quick. Let's see. So 14 gauge is 0.0747, and it gets bigger from there. So 7 gauge steel. 7 gauge steel. That's pretty damn big now, isn't it? let's see. We're talking that. That's how much we're talking, and that is your penetration. So what we're talking here is, let's see, twice that would be, we're talking, let's see, where is that? Where would that be? Where would that be? Yeah. we're talking pretty damn good. We're at roughly 3/16 inch thick. So 3/16. Welding 3/16 steel. But the proper way to weld, if anybody out there that knows welding, proper way to weld is not to butt two ends together flat, because you're not going to fill all the way through. You're going to have your edges beveled. And your beveled edges, when you do this, well, what do you see there? There's not that much thickness. So you're going to be going through a beveled edge. Like, here's your beveled edge right there. That's your beveled edge. You're going to be filling in here. So you're going to fill this in. Then you're going to fill here, fill here, fill here, fill here, and then fill in the middle. And you're just going to build up a big mound. And depending on the job, you're probably going to sand that off, grind it off, flush. You're not always welding the full thickness. You're not going to butt two ends together and weld that piece. You're not going to do that. You're going to bevel the edges. So 3/16 or 3/8 inch thick steel, as long as you bevel the edges, you don't really have to worry about the thickness of the steel. The thickness of the steel is if you're pretty much just welding two pieces on top, like one on top of the other, and then you're only welding that edge. That's all you're going to be worried about, is that edge. But even then, if you take this edge here and you bevel it in, then you're going to fill in underneath and work your way out. That's plain and simple. I've done welding with this a lot. I've welded a lot of things with it. It works wonders. It really does. And it's only like, 10 pounds? I mean, that's ridiculously light. It's on you carry it around like a pack, and it just sits on your hip, and you can just weld. As long as you have cable, I mean, you hook it up to a power cable and whatnot. Now, this one, yeah, you're probably not going to go with this one. You might want something bigger. So, 165, 225. Let's look at this guy here. This is standard. Okay, let's see. What do we have here? Okay, we've got two cables. You've got the 110 and you've got the 240. Now, 240, this welder's using the exact same everything. So even if you're using this one or this one, it's still using the same amount of wattage, the same amount of everything, but you have a little bit more going on for you here. You've got all kinds of stuff with this guy. The versatility on it, you really can't argue the facts. Let's see. Weighs 20 pounds, built-in pulsing, lift arc starting capabilities. Yeah, if this is if you're going to be running cup, there you go. You can walk the cup. You do all this stuff on it. this would work fine with an inverter generator. I've seen it done. Let's go to the next one here. Let's see. This guy. 225 amp. Works on 240. Same deal. Let's see what we got here. Low. Okay. Skill level low. Moderate, no gas required. High, gas required. Flux core. This chart literally tells you everything that you need. It's pretty self-explanatory. You've got an on-off. You have a current selector. Granted, this is stupid to have a hand crank with no way of telling you what the power output is. So this one, granted, it's cheap. I'd stay away from it, but it would work perfectly fine on an inverter generator. Let's go to the next one. These spot welders. These guys, because it is a spot welder, you can run these on a generator because you're only doing a small arc in a precise point for maybe 2 seconds. You can run an inverter generator and do like 10,000 freaking spots and not even blink an eye. It's ridiculous. I mean, these are fine. Stud welder, that works perfectly fine on an inverter generator. This 170. Let's see what we got here. Yep, another dial, but you have min and max. This is another one that I have. You have your speed, but you're limited. You only have a minimum and a maximum, amperage. It doesn't have that mid ground. All you can do is adjust your speed. So, I mean, does it work? Yes. Will it work on an inverter generator? Absolutely. I've done it. Let's see. Did that one. MiG 140 professional welder. Let's see. $500. Yeah, there you go. You have amps and volts, so you know what you're doing. You have your feeds. You've got all kinds of info on here. I mean, that's pretty damn good if you ask me. You can do both type. Weighs 24 pounds. Inverter technology. So this is an inverter generator. Or inverter welder. So an inverter welder on an inverter generator, you have no issues because this is already working for half the difficulty level. Works fine. Great. Induction controls, overcurrent. So what this is you've got your 2 deals here, you got that one over there. This is your hot lead. So you're going to put it in here, and then it connects to this. So when you're plugging this cable into here, it is then converting to that, so you have your feed. But with it unplugged, you're running your standard on there. Let's see what we have here. 30%, 30 amp, what is that? 15.5 volt, 140 amp, 21 volt. So Mode MIG. You've got 90 amps, 64 amp, and 49 amp. Yeah, I mean, that right there. There it is. There it is. This far portion right here, that little triangle shape there, that is your 50 to 60 hertz. That is the key number. When you're looking at welders on generators, 50 to 60 hertz is the cherry number that you're looking for. A welder that runs at the 50 to 60 hertz level will work these. That is the key number. We have the charts in here. This tells you your charts, and it gives you your rated duty cycle. You have 3 minutes welding, 7 minutes resting. That's great. I mean, when you're welding, 3 minutes is a long time. I mean, yes, you can weld, for like 10 minutes with a $20,000 machine, but then again, you're welding for 20 minutes. You're hunched over, looking through a lens, and you're doing this for 20 minutes. You get a lot of eye strain. These lower duty cycles, if your duty cycle is over 10 minutes, full 10 minutes, like welding for 10 minutes, then your eye strain is really, really hard. So you want to limit your duty cycle, but you also want to have a long duty cycle. I know it's really messed up, but if you want to be a good welder and you want to do a great job, you don't want to spend all day welding and looking at a light spot, because it really messes with your eyes, it screws you up, and then after a couple of years you can no longer weld anymore because you have eye issues. So if you do 3 minutes welding, few minutes waiting, 3 minutes welding, few minutes waiting, every time your welder is in the resting period, that is your time as a welder to clean the weld, clean the slag, clean the surface, grind it down, check your stuff, get something, get more rods ready, set up for the next 3 minutes, next 5 minutes, next 10 minutes. You take that time to yourself, but it keeps you going for the next job. Let's go to the next one here. Let's see. The Vulcan ProTig. Let's see. $1,200. Pair this with an inverter generator that's $1,000. You have yourself a $2,200 welder generator. Now, you're like, well, but I can buy an actual welder generator for that much. But here's the thing. The welder generator that you get that does both at the same time has 1/2 or even 1/3 the power out as an actual generator. You have an actual generator that puts out 10,000 watts. Okay, you've got 10,000 watts. What can you do with it? Well, I can run this generator or this welder, and I can also run a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay, cool. Okay, you've got a welder generator, costs you $2,400. What can it do? Well, it can weld, but I can only do 3,000 watts of anything else because it's more welder than it is generator, whereas a generator is more generator than welder. That's why you pair the two and you have best of both worlds for a correct price. Let's see what we have. Yeah. 12.5-foot TIG torch. Stick electrode is 10 foot. Foot pedal with 25-foot cord, flow gauge, regulator, 6-foot gas hose, 10-foot power cord. We've got 2 of them, one for 240, one for 120, and the 50 amp plugs. This would work. This would work on the 120 setting. You're looking at something that if you operate it in the 120 setting, and you can still do quite a bit. Okay, next one is the Easy Flux 125. This is another feeder. And we've got a logo on the back. Let's see what we got. There it is. There it is right there. 50 to 60 hertz. Works fine. Yeah. These are your levels here. So 125 amp, 20.3 volts, 50 amp, 16.5 volts. That's pretty damn good. There's your numbers. You can run this clean on a generator, inverter generator. You're looking for something in the 50 to 60 hertz, 120 volts with a 20 amp. Now, another thing that you can look at here is getting the converter plug that converts the 120 plug that your average 120 plug that is 30 amp rated. If you get a converter that goes from the 120 30 amp to a 120 20 amp plug, you can actually run this on a 30 amp fuse or a 30 amp breaker, and it'll stay the same. You won't have to worry about a few things. But that's where you have to monitor your usage and your amperage. Because if you go, oh, well, I put it on a 30 amp, so that means I can run longer. No, you still run and operate to the level of the welder and your settings on the welder. You just have a little bit more working room amp-wise for the breaker so that you're not overheating the breaker. You still need something that puts out higher voltage. Let's go up to the next ones. We've got the MIG. We've got a 215. That's a 12240. We've got a 12240, 12240. And what is this guy here? This guy, what are we plugged into here, people? Let's see. Oh, there it is. Dual voltage. Dual voltage, 12240. So, operates the same. You have your dials here. You have 12240, E6010. You've got temperature settings, overheat. You've got an actual dial that tells you what you're operating at. Let's see. What we got on the back. Regular on-off. No good decals. Okay. Now, every one of these guys, every time I get a new welder or a new piece of equipment, I always go down here and check the specifications. Duty cycle. Let's see what we got here. 120 volts, 70 amps at 40%. So 10 minutes, you have 4 minutes of welding. 240 at full amperage of 225, you're at 2 minutes out of 10 minutes. So you have that bit of a change there. It's still 24 pounds. Actual product weight 16.5, but shipping weight 24 pounds. So you have all the equipment in there. Open circuit voltage 85 volts, and Welding capacity 16th to a quarter inch, thick steel and up. Now I don't get that. 16th to a quarter inch and more. Okay, see that's that's where your beveled edges come in. Let's see, do they have? There it is. Manuals and guides and downloads. Owner's manual. I always download an owner's manual because sometimes welders for some reason don't come with an owner's manual. I've purchased 4 welders that did not come with a manual. Check the box. Check the styrofoam. Checked inside the machines, and they didn't come with anything. And then I realized that the manual was a little QR code on the back of the box that I had to download myself. And it's like, okay, where was the paper one? And they're like, oh, well, we went paperless. But you put it in a cardboard box and surrounded it with paper wrapping and stuffed everything in paper. You didn't really go paperless, you just changed the form of the paper. Let's see what we got up here. We've done quite a bit up here already. 120, 12240, 12240, and even the cheapest of the cheap. This guy here. You've got your wire feed. You've got your wire feed speed. You have your min max again. Again, this is fixing something on your Honda Civic in your garage in the middle of the night because you hit a curb and screwed something up while you're trying to get something at Taco Bell. Mild steel, got weldable. There it is. Weldable materials. Mild low alloy steel, not for aluminum or stainless steel. There's your stuff. And here we go. There it is. 60 hertz, 20 amps. 120 times 20. There you go. There's your 2400, 60 hertz. You get yourself a 7,000 watt inverter generator. You can run this, no problem. Great machines. I mean, when it comes to welders, the machine only does part of the job. 90% of the job is here. Your mind and your capabilities. If you think it through, if you know your stuff, if you study and have your paperwork ready, you know how to operate the welders. We've got all kinds of amp ranges here, all the way through. I mean, let's see what we got here. 7014, 330 seconds, 80 amps. 6013, between 20 and 90 amps. And that's from 1/16 to 3/32. People are, well, you gotta have the big electrodes. That way you put more metal in there. You don't have to just cram metal in. What you're basically doing is you're trying to spray foam it. You're trying to cram stuff in there and just pack it full. Right out the gate. Just pack it full. Welding, you have to weld in spurts so that you don't have voids, you don't have cracking, you don't have overheat in one spot, too cool in another. You want to weld at the speed of melted metal. You don't want to just cram it in. You want to weld a bead that fills in, no air pockets, no cracking, no cooling too fast, no cooling too slow. You want the metal to combine at a good pace. If you're using massive, rods, and you're maxing out on your amperage and you're just packing as much steel in there as possible, then you're defeating the whole purpose of welding properly. You want to lay a nice, even bead that you can clean off and build upon. And each layer that you build on is stronger than the next. It just builds and builds and builds, and then you have a solid surface. You're combining two materials. You're combining two materials together. If you weld too fast, you're creating a weak spot on either side of the weld. And that's where these break tests and bending tests at the welding school come in. You weld two pieces of metal together, they stick it in a machine, and then they just drive a ram through it to see if it bends and breaks. If you've over-penetrated or you've tried to pack it in too hard, too fast, it will crack and it will break because you created a brittle point in the steel. Plain and simple. Lower amps, smaller rod size, be more attentive to what you're doing than getting it done. I mean, if you're making, $40 an hour welding, use up the full hour. Don't be like, well, I'm charging them, $40 an hour, but I can do the job in 10 minutes as long as I use, a piece of, half-inch rebar. It screws everything up. Yeah, you can do it, but you shouldn't, because you're trying to do a job and prove that your job can, your job is literally somebody's life in your hands. Say you're fixing the bucket on an excavator. You screw that up, the bucket falls down and crushes somebody. You're welding a walkover bridge. You screw up, bridge comes down. People get hurt. Oh, well, why did the bridge come down? Well, there was a weak spot in here because, Joey down the street welded this and he used up, 240 amps and massive rods, and he created a weak point in the metal because the metal in the middle of the weld was super hot, and the metal on the outsides of the weld cooled different. So you have that differential, and now it created weak spots on either side of the weld. Yeah, the weld is super strong. Super, super strong. But the steel on the outer edges was weakened. That's science. Shaking your head. But that's just how this works. Take your time, weld it right, and pay attention to the documents. I mean, these charts are all over the internet. These charts come from actual welding books. They're blown up and increased in size and then laminated so that anybody can read them. And I can have these out in the rain. I can have these in a mud hole, and I don't have to worry about them getting damaged because I can hold these underwater and the water won't damage the paper because they're laminated. I can take these out anywhere, and look. That's great information to have. It really is. But that's enough for my rantings and ravings today. So I'm going to bid you all adieu and fuck off.